Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be telling you about Margaret Allen and what led up to her killing her housekeeper, Wenda Wright. So Margaret was born on January 23rd, 1966. She was mostly raised by a single mom due to her dad being in and out of prison. The whole family seemed to be having trouble with the law. Margaret has two brothers that were serving time in prison at the same time of her arrest. One did a year for cocaine possession, fleeing, and eluding police. The other is serving 35 years for grand theft, burglary, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Even two of her children were in prison at this time for gun and drug charges. Margaret has a list of crimes she had committed over the years, starting in 1988. Some being beatings with injuries, possession with use of firearms, an attack on a pregnant woman, missiles thrown into houses, the sale of cocaine, and tampering with evidence. So she was no stranger to law enforcement. She was even charged with attempted first-degree murder in 1991, but was found guilty of only aggravated battery instead. Wenda Wright was 39 and the housekeeper for Margaret Allen at 415 South Robbins Avenue in Brevard County, Florida. On February 8, 2005, Wenda was at the Allen home cleaning when Margaret noticed her purse with $2,000 in it was missing. She accused Wenda of stealing it, but when she denied it, Margaret got angry and began to beat Wenda. Margaret's 19-year-old nephew, Quinton, helped her by holding Wenda down while she allegedly poured chemicals down her throat before Quinton allegedly strangled her with a belt. They then enlisted help from a 50-year-old James Martin to dispose of the body. A few days later, Quinton turned himself into the police and told them what had happened and took them to where they could find Wenda's body. They had buried her in a shallow grave near State Road 46. Margaret Allen was indicted on March 8, 2005 for first-degree murder and kidnapping. The jury trial didn't start until September 13th of 2010. During this, there was testimony from Wenda's partner, Johnny Dublin, that on the day she went missing, Margaret had come by their house to pick Wenda up. A few hours later, Margaret returned to his house saying that she believed Wenda had stolen $2,000 from her, and she wanted to search his place for the money. He allowed her to look around and asked where Wenda was after noticing scratches on her, to which she replied she was still back at her place. He then said she left after not finding the money, but returned the next day with Quinton to ask if he knew where Wenda was. Quinton also testified. At the time, he was serving a 15-year sentence for his guilty plea for second-degree murder for Wenda Wright. He said that on February 8th, he was at Margaret's house when she noticed her purse was missing. She told him to watch the kids while she left. She then returned with Wenda, saying she had to have been the one to steal it since she was the only other person in the house when she had last seen her purse. He said she then left again, telling him not to let Wenda leave. Quinton said Wenda did try to leave at one point, but after he told her that Margaret wanted her to stay, she did. When Margaret returned, she still wouldn't let Wenda leave. He said at one point she started to cry and begged to be let go, and that was when Margaret hit her on the head and Wenda fell down. He said that Margaret threatened him with a gun if he didn't help her, so he held Wenda down while Margaret got bleach, nail polish remover, rubbing alcohol. She then poured them onto Wenda's face. During this time, one of her children actually walked into the room, and Margaret had them get her a piece of duct tape that she tried to place on Wenda's mouth. But due to all of the chemicals, the tape wouldn't stick. She then went and got a few belts and started beating her. Quinton said he then used one of the belts to tie her feet together. Then Margaret put a belt around her neck and pulled. Wenda's body began shaking, and about 3 minutes later, she stopped moving. Margaret then told him to get some sheets to tie her hands in case she had woken up. Quinton then left the house and ignored the many calls he got from Margaret. The next day, she found him at a barbershop and used the gun to convince him to come with her. He went with her as they got in a truck. He noticed that her roommate, James Martin, was driving. She informed him that Wenda was dead and he was going to help get rid of the body. The three of them went and bought plywood and borrowed a dolly to help move her body. He said that when they got back to the house, he saw that Wenda had been wrapped in carpet. They got her into the truck and grabbed shovels before driving to an area off the highway. Quinton and James dug a shallow grave while Margaret stood as a lookout. They then placed her in the hole and covered her with debris, taking the carpet with them. They threw the carpet in a dumpster at a truck stop before going to get Margaret's daughter from school. James Martin was sentenced to 60 months for his participation in hiding her body. He testified that on that day, he was at the house helping repair a car. He said Margaret asked him to help look for her purse, so he did. He said around 10 p.m. he left to pick up a starter belt for the car. When he got back, he finished working on it and then went to ask Margaret if she had any cocaine. When she told him no, he left to find some. Later returning to smoke it, he noticed that Wenda was the only one in the house. The next morning, he rode with Margaret while she took her kids to school, and she told him she needed his help with something. When they got back to the house, she showed him Wenda's body. She told him they needed to bury her, so she sent him to her brother's house to borrow a truck. He said everything was Margaret's plan, including the supplies. He then said when they were done, Quinton left while he would clean the strap they used to keep the carpet around her and the truck. He said he didn't know what happened to the truck after he cleaned it. He was still at the house when police arrived with a search warrant. Next on the stand was the medical examiner, who testified Wenda had been severely beaten and had marks on her wrist and neck, concluding she was tied up and either hung or had something tied tightly around her neck. He said her cause of death was a result of homicidal violence and strangulation, and ligatures were an important cause of her death. He said she was morbidly obese with an enlarged heart, which contributed to her death. He then said it would take about 4 to 6 minutes of strangulation to actually kill somebody. The jury unanimously voted for the death penalty, and she was also given life for kidnapping on May 19th, 2011. Margaret then had the nerve to say that she didn't understand why she was getting the death penalty when she didn't do anything. She was maintaining her innocence, even with all of the evidence and the witnesses. Margaret Allen was the third woman sentenced to death row in Florida. To this day, she still remains on death row. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and share it with your friends. Stay safe, and I'll be talking to you next week.